This is Authorize Black Incorporated, and we are here with Keith Lamar today, a writer, artist, activist, and Black man who was a death row prisoner who was wrongfully convicted in the state of Ohio. Today, we want to spread his story and spread awareness about the injustices within the prison system and within the death penalty to stop another unjust death at the hands of the prison system from happening. So first off, Keith, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Jayda. Thanks for asking. Here we're on quarantine. Been on quarantine for quite a few months now, so it's been somewhat stressful. I'm unable presently to visit with my family, so it's been kind of stressful, but not more so than what you all are going throughout the society. So I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining. It's stressful. It's been extremely stressful over these past couple of months, though. Yeah.
Right. And we're actually going to get into some more of how the prison system is handling COVID-19 and as far as its guidelines a little bit later. But for now, could you tell us a bit about yourself and for our viewers, tell us a bit about your story?
Well, as you said, my name is Keith Lamar. I've been on death row for the past 27 years, since 1995, as a result of the Lucasville prison uprising. It was a riot that happened at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in 1993. 11 prisoners and one guard were murdered by, according to the state, it was three factions, three gangs who presided over the riot. And after it was all over said and done, one of those factions, one of those gangs, the Black Gangster Disciples, predominantly became state witnesses. And so they used me and several other guys to kind of stand in for this group who were suspected of killing quite a few other people, suspected snitches, is what they were alleging. And so they used us, thinking in many cases, guessing correctly that most of us would cop out. They offered us plea bargains, and it didn't really matter whether or not you were innocent or guilty. They'd offer you a deal and expect you to take it. And when it came to me with a plea bargain, I, of course, asserted my innocence, and they didn't want to hear that, and I went to trial. They assembled an all-white jury and ultimately came back with guilty verdicts on all counts and sentenced me to death. And so that was in 1995 when I was sentenced to death. And so I've been fighting my case ever since. Went through the courts and didn't receive any relief through the courts. In fact, my own attorneys kind of sabotaged my case because the situation that I'm describing or trying to describe, it was a very political situation. A guard got killed, and because of the riot in 1993, it supplied the justification for them to build this supermax facility. And so it was a lot of political maneuvering going on, and I just got caught up in all that. And my attorneys, who theoretically were working for me, were actually working for the state. I write about it extensively in my book. It's probably too broad to go in at length here, but yeah, I write about it in my book, and it's just one thing after another. And so the reason why there is a book is because I just didn't see opportunity for me to receive any relief through the legitimate channels. And so I've just been trying to advocate for myself and utilize my own agency and whatnot. So yeah, that's how the book came about. And from the book, I've just been doing a lot of outreach. I started a literacy project called Native Sons to get books into at-risk youth. Because of my own personal experience, one of the things that I've been really, really called to kind of move to do is try to reach back and try to provide some life for some young people who are coming up behind me through the system. And I've been fortunate enough to send books in to them, and also to participate in several book clubs with young people in junior high school. I taught at the college level, class called Prison Experience at Youngstown State University and Binghamton University in New York. And so that's basically what I've been doing in addition to trying to fight for my life. Yeah.
And I read your book. It was very heart-touching, very eye-opening. So I'll be sure at the end of this interview to make sure that we link information of where viewers can buy your book at the end. And then also definitely want to talk. We're going to get into Native Sons later on in the interview because I definitely want to dive deep more into that. But for now, what injustices have you seen take place in the prison system, both in your own case and with what you have witnessed during your time in prison?
What's that?
Sorry, did you hear me?
Okay. No, I didn't hear. I couldn't hear you when the recording is going on. Yeah.
Okay. I asked what injustices have you seen take place in the prison system, both in your own case and with what you have witnessed during your time in prison?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, when people think about the criminal justice system, the word justice really don't apply here.
Right.
Brian Stevenson, I think it was Brian Stevenson who said that you're better off if you're rich and guilty than innocent and poor. Mm-hmm. And so what you have here in the United States is predominantly poor people doing exorbitant amounts of time based on predominantly drug offenses. You know, a lot of guys who are in here got caught up in the war on drugs. And so it's just poor people who got caught up in the epidemic and were just kind of warehoused in these places, thrown into these places. And since it's poor people in here who, while they were in society, were fighting over limited means and resources, you know, that same struggle continue in here. And you have a lot of gangs who are fighting over these limited resources because, you know, although you're poor, if you were, trying to figure out the right word, if you were crazy enough, quote unquote, to demand a trial, to assert your innocence, as I did, more than likely, you receive above and beyond what you would have normally received for whatever crime that you were incarcerated for. So you have a lot of guys who were indigent and still asserted their innocence and would be given triple amount of time that they would have probably done if they would have just pled guilty. And that's the kind of catch that a lot of guys get caught up in. You put in a position where, you just trying to figure out what's the best route to take. And so you meet a lot of people like that in here, a lot of guys who are innocent in prison, but they just didn't have enough money to put forth a proper defense. And so, you see that a lot in here. You see, a lot of brutality in here, a lot of violence. Some of it, most of it inflicted from guards on prisoners, but a lot of it is from prisoner on prisoner, and then because of the lack of resources and the limited opportunities that guys have here. So this whole situation is unjust, basically, because it all extends from unjust or unequal distribution of wealth. It's just poor people pitted against other poor people, killing other poor people, robbing other poor people. And so that's essentially what you have in here. And it's the same thing that's going on in the streets and the ghettos across this country. It's just poor people trying to fend for themselves, trying to survive. And that's essentially the same struggle that's going on inside the prison. Yeah.
Right. And we do live in a world, in a society, where being poor is almost like a death sentence in so many different aspects in life, whether it be healthcare, whether it be school to prison pipeline, education, and it's something that I'm appreciative that people like you are fighting against. And I want to talk to you a bit more about your thoughts on some recent news and events that have been happening. And as you were saying before, you brought up COVID, so I want to talk more about that. There's been a large call to action to protect the safety of prisoners as COVID-19 spreads. So what have you experienced or seen when it comes to keeping everyone in your facility safe from COVID-19?
Here in prison, well, I'm in a supermax. I'm in solitary confinement. And so if there's anything good about being in my situation, I was already quarantined. So this is pretty much shut down. They had a brief uptick a few months ago where quite a few COs caught the virus and a few prisoners caught the virus. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one guard lost his life as a result of contracting the virus. No prisoners here at the facility where I'm housed died as a result of COVID-19. But that in another prison they had a larger outbreaks because it's more open than where I'm situated at, and so if you get sick in prison, it doesn't really matter what illness it is. You're in trouble because this is not a place that's geared towards allocating funds for health care, for food and education. This is a money machine, and so they're making money, not spending money on keeping things of that nature. And so if you get sick in here, if you catch the COVID, you're really in trouble because it's just not equipped here in prison to deal with anything like that. So,
you have 1 minute remaining.
So, a lot of guys who...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
A lot of us who know that, who've been in prison for a long period of time, have been extra careful in how we move around and navigate these spaces and whatnot. But if you catch COVID in prison, it won't be good for you at all. And as quite a few guys in other prisons had to find that the hard way. Yeah, and it all goes back to just being poor and being in unfortunate situations like this where you can't really advocate for yourself. You can't really demand the things as far as sanitation is concerned. Demand the things that you need in order to protect yourself.
Right.
And so it's difficult in that.
Thank you for using GTL. Jayda?
Hi, are you guys still able to hear me?
Yeah, he will call you right back. The calls will come in 15-minute increments.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
He'll call back, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Just hold on just 1 moment, and that way I won't talk the next time it happens. So maybe you can edit me out.
Okay.
But he'll be there. And recording. Thank you for using GTL.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Keith. So I want to ask. Yes, thank you. We got your last answer, and I want to know from your point of view, what do you think that prisons can do better to protect you all during this global pandemic?
I mean, overall, I think that the shift that has to be made in terms of prison is these are human beings that you are housing in these cages.
Right.
See, that right there is the thing that kind of creates all the problems. The standpoint, it starts from the standpoint that they're not willing to acknowledge our humanity. Similar to how we saw them young Latin children being placed in cages over last summer. If you're not willing to acknowledge somebody's humanity, then the conversation or what you might be able to do in terms of protecting them, feeding them, clothing them, all that breaks down because you have to first begin with the person's humanity. And if you're willing to acknowledge someone's humanity, then everything flows from the fact that you're treating or dealing with a human being.
Right.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
And you deal with it just as you would any other human being. But it's the same thing with poor people out in society and poor communities. The powers that be aren't willing to look at these people as human beings. And so you see pockets of suffering in certain areas where people are suffering in disproportionate numbers than other people in that very community. And those are essentially poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Homeless people. And so it's the same thing. Prisoners, we're not on Mars. We in the United States. And so the same thing that happens to poor people in marginalized areas of society is the same thing that happened to us here. It's just an extension, a lateral thing. It's not really something that's disconnected from that. It's the same thing, the same indifference, the same callousness that is reserved for poor people out in society. That same callousness extends here in prison as well. So we're dealing with the same thing for the same reason. These people aren't really willing to acknowledge our humanity. And that's the problem. Yeah.
Right. And as you know, I want to talk about another recent event that has been extremely huge, the presidential race. And our first Black woman vice president, Kamala Harris, was just elected. And do you think that having her in the White House, having a Black woman in that White House, will help with racism within the prison system and with the death penalty?
Well, it's really hard to, I don't look at it that way. I mean, capitalism is a vehicle. So if we can agree that driving an SUV contributes to greenhouse gases, that contributes to things that precipitate climate change, it doesn't really matter who's driving the vehicle, who's in the passenger seat.
Right.
It's a vehicle. And so, this system, operates and, everything operates in service of empire. Barack Obama, I'm a huge fan of Barack Obama, for instance, but, Barack Obama, everyone knows, is, responsible for a lot of deaths, with drone strikes. Mm-hmm. A lot of innocent people died under Barack Obama's watch. Barack Obama deported a lot of people, more than Donald Trump, all in the service of empire. And so it's hard really to say what, if anything, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will be able to do in terms of affect change, because they still operate in service of empire. They still operate this vehicle. And this vehicle is basically a killing machine. And let's not forget that, Joe Biden was the architect of the crime bill. Kamala Harris was also participating heavily in incarcerating predominantly Black and brown people when she was the Attorney General of California in San Francisco, I believe. And so, although both of them have come out since, acknowledging the wrongness of that policy, we have to wait and see whether or not they are willing to go as far as remedying some of the wrongs that they have done. So far, they've been making all the right noises as far as saying, yeah, it was wrong that we did this. But that's what, all of them say.
Right.
When they now won't need something from those communities. And, Black people, brown people came out in droves, women, and men came out in droves and put them in office. And so we just have to wait and see. But ultimately, this system is designed to work only in certain ways. And so until you kind of change the system or reevaluate our values as a society, then nothing really is going to change. And that conversation has to stop with the redistribution of wealth, redistribution of resources, because that's essentially what this boils down to, Jayda. It boils down to what people need in order to survive, in order to live. Mm-hmm. I always tell the story about Auschwitz and during the Holocaust. When they was rounding up people to put them in these concentration camps, they told them to bring everything, you need in order to survive. And so they brought spoons and, cups, utensils, clothing, bedding, and all these things. But when they got to the concentration camps, all these things were confiscated from them. And, the first few days of being in the camps, they were, looking for a spoon so they wouldn't have to drink their soup out of the bowl like dogs.
Right.
And, and for these first 72 hours, their whole life centered around obtaining this spoon. Well, after the war was over with, they found out in the warehouse there was millions of spoons. And they found out that they kept them from them not because they were worried about running out of spoons one day. It's because without a spoon, they was forced to lap their soup out of a bowl like dogs. And so they was forced to stay on a certain level. It's the same thing here in this society. It's enough money for everybody to have a decent life in this country. It's the richest country in the world. And yet those riches,
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Those riches rest in just a few people's hands. And just like in the concentration camps where those spoons were intentionally kept up out of circulation in order to keep people on a debased level, it's the same thing here in this society. I mean, you have one person, Jeff Bezos, with $200 billion. More money than he can ever even imagine spending.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, you have people sleeping on the street. People who can't even feed their families. You have, people in Congress and in the Senate, arguing about, haggling about, giving people $900. These millionaires, and it's just, and until you address those kind of discrepancies, we still be having these conversations. And what I'm saying is that, this conversation that you and I have is not a new conversation. It's an ongoing conversation that's been had over and over again. I mean, it's good that we're having it. But it has to, especially you, especially a young person who is just starting out on your life, it's good that you are seeking the answers to these questions. And if you stay on this path, I'm sure you will find them. But and then what? There's a lot of people that, have arrived at the conclusions that, we're discussing right now. And it's just, a matter of whether or not we can muster the will and the determination, to do something about it. That's what it basically comes down to. Yeah, young people like yourself. And that's why, I'm really encouraged by having this conversation with you because, you're at Howard University, so you're in the right place to be. And not only that, you're in the right frame of mind to really affect the kind of change that you want to see that for your generation. So yeah, I'm thankful to be able to encourage you to add fuel to your fire, whatever direction you want to take it in. Yeah.
Well, thank you, because I just personally don't believe that that humans should have the right to determine whether one human should be able to live or not. And so, like, this issue has been something that's been weighing really heavy on my heart. That humans have gone so far as to claim that power, and it's something that we definitely do need to be fighting against on a daily basis. And yeah. So thank you for those words. And moving on from Kamala Harris, I want to talk about another president. So Joe Biden has been advocating for his criminal justice policy that calls for the Safe Justice Act, no mandatory minimums, ending private prisons, bail reform, no juveniles in adult prisons, job training and education in prisons, decriminalizing marijuana, investing $1 billion a year into juvenile justice reform, and the list goes on. So I want to know, what are your thoughts on his criminal justice policy, and where do you see areas of improvement?
So everything you just named is the things that he put in place. So he's talking about undoing.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Talking about undoing something that, 30 years ago was fashionable, that he helped, put into place. When you talk about juveniles doing life sentences, it's juveniles who have been in prison for, more than half their lives because of Joe Biden. And these are dangerous places. We're talking about kids, 13, 14, 15 years old in adult prison, being raped, being beaten, And so, it's not just, it has, the policy has to change, I agree. But it's not really enough in terms of the damage that has already been wrought by the decisions that he's made. And people say, well, you can't cry over spilled milk. And that might be true. If it's not your milk that's spilled.
Exactly.
If it's not your life, that's on the table. You know what I mean? And that's the problem, with this country. The people who are making the policies are removed from the repercussions of those policies. And so it's a disconnect. They don't understand. And, I really don't have much faith in Biden per se. I mean, I definitely think he's a better option than Donald Trump. I don't think anybody in their right mind would disagree with that. But it's people like you and I, people who voted for Biden. Those are the people who have to remain engaged and see that his words are more than just talk.
Right.
And see that not only that these laws are changed, but also the psychological help that the people need, the young person who was put through adult prison as a juvenile. I mean, you have to look for those people and help those people because, just speaking from experience, you can't go through this situation. I've been in prison for over 3 decades now, and you can't get through this unscathed. There's so much trauma involved, and I'm navigating this part of life, and it's not an easy thing. I've been lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones, and I only say that because I have a strong circle of family and friends who have helped me hold on to my humanity, and I've been fortunate in that sense, in that regard. But even I, with all the advantages that I've had over the years in terms of the love and support, even I have suffered greatly as a result of being subjected to these kind of torturous situations. This is hell on earth being in prison, especially if you're a young person. You don't really know how to, you don't really have the resources to navigate these difficulties. So, I hear all the things that you spoke about, and I'm not impressed really because all you really,
you have 1 minute remaining.
all you're really talking about is undoing the damage that you have done, and that's a place to start. I mean, I'm someone who believes in redemption. I personally have done things that require the forgiveness of others, and so I'm seeking that redemption. But it has to be more than just talking. Part of the reason why I started my literacy project. I mean, I initially come to prison. I was a drug dealer. Some guys came to rob me. I ended up shooting the guy, taking someone's life, and we can argue whether or not I was justified in doing that. The fact that it matters, somebody, because of me, is no longer on this planet. And so, since I'm still on this planet, my obligation, as I come to understand it, is to try to help save somebody else's life. And so that's what my literacy project was about. That's how I seek to be redeemed. Not just saying I've changed, but going into dark places and trying to help save somebody's life. And so if Biden, if he's sincere, that's what he'd be doing instead of just...
Thank you for using GTL. This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
Hey, Keith.
Okay, yeah.
Well, during your last answer, you went into your literacy program, so I want to talk to you about that a little bit more. So you have a literacy program called Native Sons, and we would love for you to tell us about the program. What it's, you went into a little bit in your previous answer, but just going into more depth about what is the program, what do you do, and what inspired you to start it.
Well, when I was sentenced to death, it was essentially like being thrown into the middle of the ocean, basically. That's how huge it seemed to me, how small I felt. And I met a few guys who kind of encouraged me to start reading, start expanding my mind so I can literally rise to the occasion. So I had to elevate myself. And Richard Wright, who's a...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Richard Wright, I started reading his books, Black Boy, Native Sons, and in fact, by reading Richard Wright, that's how I taught myself how to write. Just by reading his book every day and going over, just looking at how he was using the semicolon and looking at how he was using independent clause. Before I even knew the technical terms for these different words, I knew how to do it because I was, paying very close attention to how Richard Wright was doing it. So he had a big impact on my development, Richard, not just as a writer, but as a human being. One of the things that Richard Wright said, and one of the things that I often tell people, he said that if we don't find our way to a human path and inform our contact with a deeper sense of life, then all of us, black as well as white, are going down the same train. And he was speaking collectively, not as a personal charge. That in order for me really to kind of redeem myself and to rescue my potential from my past, I had to start to begin to inform my life with a deeper sense of what was real and what was right. And, had to just go deeper off into what it means to be a human being and what it means to be alive. And so that's what kind of gave me the idea to start this literacy project. Because in just a few short years of my doing some serious reading and studying, my life had kind of changed. And what I mean by my life is not my circumstances, not my situation, because my situation is separate from what I take to be my life. How I feel and what I think, what I believe, that's my life. And those are things that, no matter what is going on around me, those are things that I always have control over. And I wanted to get that sense of agency to young people, because that's really where it's happening at.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the way, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I was given to understand that it was what I had as opposed to who I was as an individual that mattered. And, this wrong way of seeing things was kind of encouraged by my peers, and so I put a lot of energy and effort into acquiring material things. And so when it came down to it, when I was thrown upon myself, there was nothing there. When I was sentenced to death, when I was forced into the situation where I just had myself to rely on, I was found wanting because I hadn't invested in those areas of myself. And so reading helped me fill up those empty spaces inside myself, and it kind of really helped me turn my life around. And so that being the case, I thought that I owed it to myself and to those who were coming behind me to kind of try to make an effort, because I came through those juvenile places.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I came through those juvenile places, and there was nothing, no light there when I came through, and so I knew that it was a need, and I just tried to fill it. And this is not something that I'm trying to do to go to the parole board or anything like that. It has nothing to do with my case. This is just about my own individual redemption. Me trying to make my own individual life mean something other and beyond what these people say about me in my life. It's just part of me taking control of that narrative and trying to do something righteous with my life. Yeah, so I started the literacy project, on my own with no idea on how that was done. And, one of the things that I found out about this life, about my life, just about life in general, is that this universe, this world that we live in, it responds to, our intentions. It responds to, the quality of our thoughts, the quality of our heart, and the condition of our heart. And when we step out, on the water, so to speak, the universe responds to that kind of conviction. And so, without even knowing how, I will, create this this literacy project. I just had it in my heart to do it, and I stepped out, and people came, things came together, and I'm doing it. Just a matter, just because that's where my heart is. My heart is, yeah.
And what do you see for the future of Native Sons?
I really don't know. I'm reading Between the World and Me with some students out of New York. I'm reading we're watching God, but Neil Hurston with some students out of Cincinnati. And so the future, for me is, whether or not I'm able to convince these young people that these people that we're reading about, these things that we're reading about are real things, and that you, by injecting yourself into these stories, into these narratives, you not only engage with these realities. I mean, these are real people, although they're on the pages of a book. That you can project yourself into these stories, and you can determine what kind of person you want to be. You can decide that just through reading. And so I'm just trying to encourage young people to utilize their agency, just to understand that they do have a choice, they do have a say in what becomes of their lives. And so, that's something that I didn't really fully understand when I was 15, 16 years old. And so, that's one of the things. I don't have any grand scheme in terms of, ultimate outcome. I'm just taking it one step at a time. And I feel more comfortable doing it that way instead of trying to project myself 20 years into the future, because what I know about this life is that tomorrow isn't really promised to any of us. And, over the past year, over 500,000, close to 500,000 people died as a result of coronavirus. And I guarantee you, none of those people, even the ones who were already up in age, none of those people expected to die. But that's the deal of being down here on this planet. You can leave at any moment. So the question that we as individuals have to ask ourselves, are we living now? Are you doing the most and best you can do with your time and potential right now? And a lot of us wait until we get our degree, until we get married, until we do this, until we do that. And, and don't even realize that, all that is wishful thinking. You don't even know if you'll be here until those things come about. So the best thing you can do with your life is step out on that water now, to do whatever that's in your heart and mind now. Do it now. Do it. Yeah. So that's, what I'm trying to do with my project. And it's been a real rewarding experience, to have a young person respond to, something that has had a big impact on my life. Sitting in solitary confinement, reading Black Boy, Richard Wright's autobiography, and just coming to see what he was doing, like he was literally writing his story.
Right.
And that's what we're all doing. But some of us are aware of it, and some of us aren't. And the key is to become aware, to become conscious, and to start consciously participating in the unfolding of your life. Yeah.
Exactly. Completely agree. And I only have a few more questions left for you. So lastly, I want to talk to you about what we can do to help you and advocate against the death penalty. And so what are some actions that listeners right now can take to help you get off of death row?
Well, you can go to my website. It's too much to say here. One of the things that we're trying to do, we're trying to get some competent counsel. As I referenced earlier, I've had...
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
I've had attorneys throughout this whole process, but these people are paid by the state because I'm indigent. That's one of the things that, being in the great United States, if you're indigent, you would be appointed attorneys. But we all know how, things work. You work for whoever's paying you. And so since my attorneys were being paid by the state, essentially, or, literally work for the state, not for me.
Right.
And I found that out the hard way. And so, and you get what you pay for in this country under capitalism. And so, since I didn't pay anything, I haven't received anything. Not to say that there are exceptions afford competent counsel. I mean, we're a long way off from that, so people who might be hearing this conversation, hearing this exchange, if they want to read my book before they engage with my situation, the book is there for you. I wrote that, with the help of some friends, I wrote that book, so it's there. So, that was the hard part, condensing this whole thing into 200-something pages so people could, and it's not just me saying these things, all these things that I write about in the book is substantiated by documents, statements that were withheld from me doing trial that I've since recovered and have now made available online. So people can do their due diligence, research my case, and, determine whether or not, after they've read everything, whether or not they want to invest time out of their lives in trying to help me save mine, and so that's the decision that people have to make. But, read the book. The book is there. You can go to my website, keithlamar.org. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram. You can see some of the things that we are planning for this year, some of the things that we have done. Just amazing things that we've done last year, in particular in 2020. We put on 2 Freedom First concerts. We did a run walk, a bike event in New York. And as I said, I'm reading with kids in New York and Cincinnati, Ohio. And so, the campaign is just an ongoing thing. And it's not, solely based on saving my life. It's just, because it's all an extension of the same thing, Jayda. What's happened with George Floyd, what happened to Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tommy Rice. It's all come out of the same.
This call is originating from an Ohio correctional facility and may be recorded and monitored.
Of course, those, Breonna and George Floyd, they're no longer here, so they can't speak for themselves. But I'm here, and so I'm, trying to speak not only for myself, but speaking to the situation that, snatched their life. Because the same thing is threatening to snatch my life, as well. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of this interview, we will have in the caption linked Keith Lamar's website, where you can buy his book, where you can buy his merchandise. I just ordered a mask and a t-shirt, so they should be coming in soon. And so we'll have all the information in the caption for all of you viewers who are listening to help and donate and spread the word. And so, Keith,
You have 1 minute remaining.
I'm so appreciative that you took this time out today to talk to us. Your story needs to be heard. It's inspiring, and thank you for everything that you're doing to give back to the community as well, and to help the Black community with your literacy program and everything that you're doing. Giving back to the community is so important, and I just thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, you're very welcome, Jayda, and I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I mean, for a young person to be engaged in this kind of outreach, I think it's very important, very impressive. And I don't know what you majored in Harvard, but I have a great fondness for Harvard University. A good friend of mine graduated from Harvard University, Paula J. Parker, childhood